Two women in white robes knocked on a grandmother's door in 1980, handed her a baby, and said, "Your son doesn't want this child anymore." But her son was already dead. This is the story of Holly Marie Clouse, a 42-year journey from stolen infant to DNA breakthrough that finally brought justice within reach. December 1980, Texas. Harold Dean Clouse Jr., 21, and his wife Tina Gail Lynn Clouse, 17, had moved from Florida chasing the American dream. Dean worked as a carpenter while Tina devoted herself to their 5-month-old daughter, Holly Marie, carrying a baby book everywhere to document every precious moment. Within weeks, they would both be dead. January 1981, a jogger discovered two decomposed bodies in dense woods off Wallaceville Road, Harris County. The man had been beaten and bound. The woman strangled. Both were young, unidentified, and would remain nameless for 4 decades as Jane and John Doe. Their families in Florida had been sending letters and making desperate phone calls. The silence that followed would stretch into years, then decades. What they didn't know was that Dean and Tina were already murdered by December 1980, their bodies dumped in the Texas wilderness. And their 5-month-old daughter had vanished without a trace. Late 1980, Daytona Beach, Florida. Donna Casasanta, Dean's mother, opened her door to find two barefoot strangers in flowing white robes, cradling an infant. They spoke in rehearsed, emotionless tones. Her son had joined their religious group and abandoned his baby daughter. They refused to give names, addresses, or phone numbers, then disappeared into the night. The deception was complete. While Donna believed her son had joined a cult and rejected his family, Dean and Tina were already dead. The women in white robes had stolen Holly from a crime scene and were systematically erasing her identity. 3 women from the same group later met Donna at Daytona Speedway to return Dean's car. Sister Susan reinforced the lie. Dean belonged to their religious community and was cutting all family ties. Donna had no reason to suspect she was being manipulated by people connected to murder. This wasn't random criminality, it was calculated psychological warfare designed to prevent family members from searching for victims who were already dead. The women in white robes belonged to a nomadic religious sect that operated across multiple states in the late 1970s and early 1980s. While their exact identity remains unclear, investigative patterns suggest they targeted vulnerable young families, particularly those isolated from extended family support. The group's methods were sophisticated. They used religious rhetoric to justify family separation, dressed uniformly to project spiritual authority, and spoke in rehearsed scripts to avoid revealing personal information. Their ability to coordinate across state lines indicates organized leadership and planning. What happened to Holly reveals their most disturbing practice, the systematic theft and placement of children with affiliated families who would raise them under false identities. The Arizona pastor who ultimately adopted Holly was likely part of this network, whether knowingly or as an unwitting participant in child trafficking. Investigators suspect this wasn't an isolated incident. The group's organized structure and multi-state operation suggests other children may have been similarly placed with religious families, their true identities erased just as completely as Holly's. The connection between this religious sect and the murders of Dean and Tina remains the case's most critical unsolved element. Did the group kill the parents to steal their child? Were Dean and Tina trying to escape when they were murdered? These questions drive the ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, the Clouse family's search efforts in Texas had become increasingly desperate. They drove to the last known addresses Dean had provided, only to find abandoned apartments and landlords who remembered nothing. Letters sent to P.O. boxes came back marked "Return to Sender." Phone calls to local police departments yielded the same response. No missing persons reports matched their descriptions. But what haunted Donna Casasanta most were those women in white robes. Their emotionless delivery, their refusal to provide any contact information, their identical appearance, it felt rehearsed, calculated, wrong. She replayed that night over and over, searching for details she might have missed, clues that could lead her back to her son and granddaughter. The painful hope that kept the family searching for over 4 decades was built on a lie these women had told with perfect composure, knowing that Dean and Tina were already dead. Donna Casasanta spent 41 years believing her son had abandoned his family for a cult. She hired private investigators, worked with volunteer organizations, and followed every lead, no matter how remote. She kept Holly's baby book, maintained a bedroom, and celebrated birthdays alone for 4 decades. The cruel mathematics of this deception meant Donna was searching for a granddaughter while believing her son was alive but had chosen to reject his family. She never knew she should have been looking for murder suspects instead of cult members. Phone calls to police departments became routine. Missing person reports filed across multiple states. Always the same answer: no new information, no developments. The case files gathered dust while a grandmother's hope slowly turned to desperate resignation. Donna Casasanta died in 2021, 1 year before Holly was found. She never learned that her son hadn't abandoned his family, he had died trying to protect them. What Donna couldn't have known was the disturbing world her granddaughter had entered. The nomadic religious sect operated completely outside government oversight, moving between Arizona, California, and Oklahoma like ghosts. They issued no birth certificates, maintained no official records, and deliberately avoided any contact with authorities that might expose their activities. Children within the group were raised communally, taught that they were chosen, and that their birth families were sinners who had to be abandoned for salvation. The sect's ability to remain invisible was masterful. They homeschooled to avoid enrollment records, paid in cash to leave no paper trails, and moved frequently enough that neighbors never got suspicious. Holly was growing up in a world designed to make her disappear, where questioning her origins would be treated as spiritual rebellion and where the very concept of biological family was considered a sin against God's true will. 2021, after 40 years, forensic genetic genealogy revolutionized the case. The same technology that helps people discover ancestry was about to solve Texas's most heartbreaking cold case. Genetic genealogist Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick and her team at Identifinders International took DNA from the unidentified remains and began building family trees through public genealogy databases. They worked backwards through generations, following bloodlines and eliminating possibilities until only one truth remained. The process required extraordinary precision. Starting with distant cousin matches, people who shared great-great-grandparents but had never heard of Dean or Tina, the genealogists mapped family connections across multiple generations. Each DNA match became a clue, each family tree a roadmap leading back to identity. October 2021, Harold Dean Clouse Jr. and Tina Gail Lynn Clouse were finally identified. But this breakthrough opened an even more urgent question: if Dean and Tina died in 1980, what happened to their baby? The genealogists created genetic profiles of what Holly's DNA should look like, a unique combination of her parents' markers. Then they searched through millions of DNA profiles submitted to ancestry companies by Americans curious about their heritage. The answer was hiding in plain sight. June 2022, investigators contacted a 42-year-old mother of 5 living in Oklahoma. The DNA evidence was conclusive: she was Holly Marie Clouse. The woman who had lived her entire adult life under a different name learned that her birth parents hadn't abandoned her to join a cult. They had been murdered when she was 5 months old. She was stolen from a crime scene and raised by people who erased her true identity. "It's overwhelming," Holly said in her first interview. "I lived my whole life not knowing who I really was." November 2022, Holly met her biological family for the first time in 42 years. The reunion happened in a hotel conference room with cameras rolling, a moment that had seemed impossible for 4 decades. "God kept me safe and protected all these years," she said through tears, embracing relatives who had never stopped searching. The family shared photos Holly had never seen, images of Dean and Tina as devoted young parents who had died trying to protect their daughter. Holly learned that Tina had been just 17, carrying that baby book everywhere to document her daughter's first year. Dean had worked extra carpenter shifts, saving money for Holly's future. These weren't cult members who abandoned their child, they were loving parents whose dreams ended in murder. It started with a routine ancestry DNA test. Holly Miller had submitted her sample to learn about her heritage, completely unaware that her genetic profile would light up genealogy databases across Texas like a Christmas tree. Within hours of her DNA being processed, the system began matching her to the Clouse family tree with impossible precision. Investigators faced the delicate task of verifying Holly's identity before making contact. They spent weeks cross-referencing her DNA against multiple family members, confirming birth timing, and building an airtight case before approaching her with the most shocking news imaginable. Imagine going to work one Tuesday morning as Holly Miller, mother of 5 from Oklahoma, and ending that same day learning you are Holly Marie Clouse, the missing daughter of murdered parents, one of America's most invisible missing persons cases. Your entire identity, your family history, your understanding of where you came from, all of it wrong. Today, Holly Marie Clouse has transformed her story into advocacy. She works with other families searching for missing loved ones and helps fund DNA investigations through the Dean and Tina Lynn Clouse Memorial Fund. But Dean and Tina's killers remain free after 44 years. The Texas Attorney General's Cold Case Unit continues investigating, now with their most valuable asset, Holly herself. Her memories, DNA, and story provide new leads that didn't exist during the original investigation. Investigators are pursuing several key questions. Who were the women in white robes? How was the religious group connected to the murders? Are there other victims or stolen children? The answers may finally be within reach. Holly's case proves that cold cases are never truly cold when people refuse to forget. Advanced DNA technology, dedicated investigators, and community attention can solve cases that seemed impossible for decades. But here's what haunts investigators most: this probably wasn't their only crime. Organized groups don't steal one child and disappear. They don't develop sophisticated deception techniques for a single operation. Somewhere out there, other families may still be searching for children who were taken by women in white robes, handed off to unsuspecting religious families, and raised under stolen identities. Somewhere out there, other parents may have been murdered to silence them, their bodies hidden in unmarked graves while their children grew up never knowing their real names. Think about what solved Holly's case: not a deathbed confession or a smoking gun, but millions of ordinary people taking DNA tests to learn about their ancestry. Every person who submits their genetic information to genealogy databases potentially holds the key to solving cases like this. Your DNA might be the missing piece that identifies remains sitting nameless in morgues across America. Your family tree might connect dots that investigators have been trying to connect for decades. Your curiosity about your own heritage might bring another Holly Marie Clouse home to her family. But DNA databases only work when people participate. Cold cases only get solved when communities care enough to keep them visible. Families only find their missing loved ones when strangers decide their stories matter. That's why this channel exists, not just to tell stories, but to solve them. Every case we cover stays in public view. Every share keeps investigators' phones ringing. Every comment reminds law enforcement that people still care about victims whose names they may have forgotten. If Holly's story moved you, don't just feel the emotion, act on it. Subscribe to support investigative journalism that refuses to let cold cases stay cold. Share this story because someone watching might have information about the women in white robes or the religious group that stole Holly. Leave a comment with the names of unsolved cases in your area that deserve this same level of attention. Holly Marie Clouse spent 42 years living a lie created by her parents' murderers. She survived because strangers cared enough to give genetic genealogy the tools to find her. Now she's fighting to ensure other families don't wait 4 decades for answers. Join that fight. Because every DNA test submitted, every cold case shared, every family that refuses to stop searching brings us closer to a world where children like Holly don't disappear into lies designed to protect killers. The case that began with 2 women in white robes continues with one woman's determination to ensure her parents finally receive justice. But it won't end until every stolen child comes home and every unpunished killer faces the consequences they've been running from for decades. Your next click could be the one that changes everything.